The Florida Gators going into 2020 had a lot of huge expectations from a lot of fans. People thought that this was finally the year that they were going to go ahead and win the SEC East Championship. The Florida Gators were a pretty huge favorite as they had Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Trayvon Grimes, Kadarius Toney, and many other players that were definitely coming back for this year. Look at defensively, Zachary Carter. You had guys like Chris Bogle, and even guys like Khalil Elam, just to give you guys a few examples on the defensive side of the ball, and just many others as far as depth on their defense. The Florida Gators, starting off the year, were extremely hot. They had one of, if not the best passing attack in all of college football, and they looked very, very unstoppable. They had some blunders, including losing to Texas A&M, but the Florida Gators continued to move on forward as they ended up defeating the Georgia Bulldogs, finally pulling that monkey off their back. The Georgia Bulldogs are a really good football team, and we all know that they're the only team besides the Florida Gators that can get to the SEC championship game and challenge Alabama along the way. Before the Georgia Bulldogs, they actually ended up getting destroyed by the Florida Gators, which again is good for the Florida Gators as well. Kyle Trask did his thing. Kyle Pitts did his thing. It was a bloody mess. To be fair, though, after years of losing to the Georgia Bulldogs, especially for the SEC's crown, you got to give a lot of credit, and you got to really kind of feel good for the Florida Gators to and able to win them that football game. But after that win, a lot of people thought that, hey, they actually are contenders. They actually are people that can defeat Alabama. And I was one of those people that say, hey, maybe they can actually challenge my Alabama Crimson Tide, and I actually was nervous about that football game. But then there were just rumors. There were rumors kind of circulating about them during the year that they were kind of undisciplined. Players were kind of skipping on practices. Dan Mullen he wasn't kind of taking it seriously. And, Dan Mullen is not a fan favorite. I mean, pretty much he's one of the most hated coaches in all of college football, especially for a lot of fans. He makes a lot of excuses. He acts like a smartass. I mean, this and that with Dan Mullen, right? We college football fans don't like Dan Mullen. Doesn't really have a huge history. However, people still, even though I don't like Dan Mullen, and a lot of fans don't like Dan Mullen, we all still gave him credit because we all thought that he's going to ride past everyone else, get to that SEC championship game, and whoever was going to win that football game was going to go to the college football playoff. Then the LSU game came. Then you kind of saw all the rumors that were kind of circling around this team and kind of became true in a way. You saw a lot of undisciplined characteristics happen with that football team. Dan Mullen and his coaches kind of looked lost in the sideline, kind of failed to kind of make adjustments during the game. Players were throwing up, players were arguing with coaches, and players were arguing with each other on the sidelines. And it was just a hot mess that entire football game. Now, of course, Florida had some spark left. They had a pretty good comeback, and at the end of the day, they almost won that football game. However, a shoe was the biggest reason why they didn't win that football game. But even with the shoe toss for Marco Wilson, you can't really blame Marco Wilson for putting that team in that position. And the reason why I say that is because LSU was undermanned. LSU had less than 60 scholarship players, and LSU lost over 20 players to the NFL, including a bunch of opt-outs during the season. Guys like Jamar Chase, guys like Kerry Vincent, Tyler Shelvin, Apu Aki, I probably botched that name, but Apu Aki, and a bunch of other players that decided to either opt out or transfer to different college football programs. And they lost to that team, an LSU team that was dealing with chaos, an LSU team that had two freshman quarterbacks that are 17, 18 years of age, went up in the swamp. Well, guys like Max Johnson went up in the swamp, never started a game in his life, and won that game. That's the type of thing that we talk about. And even though Florida is very close, they're very, very close to kind of being on that same tier with Alabama, it's games like that, how they kind of overlook their opponents. They didn't really take the opponent seriously. And at the end of the day, it cost them a college football playoff spot, whether they won in the SEC or not. But then after the press conference, you had Dan Mullen make every single excuse in the book. Threw his players under the damn bus, threw his coaching staff under the damn bus, blamed everybody, blamed the fans for not really kind of showing up, and he blamed pretty much the entire situation of COVID for Florida not beating the LSU Tigers. He blamed everyone but himself. He never took any damn accountability at all. And this happened during the A&M game. Remember during the A&M game, he said the reason why they lost that game was because A&M had 60,000 fans in attendance, and it distracted Florida for doing what they wanted to do, even though A&M had 20,000 fans in attendance. That's your head coach, Florida. That's Dan Mullen. And to be honest, that's who Dan Mullen always is. Dan Mullen has been that guy since Mississippi State. And that's why people just don't like him. Now, to give the Florida Gators some credit and to give Dan Mullen some credit, a couple weeks later, they went to the SEC Championship game, and they did a great job against Alabama. They competed against Alabama, even though the score was 35-17, and even though their defense was horrible, the Gators fought back. The Gators came back in the game, and at the end of the day, they almost won it. It was 52-46. Florida had all the momentum in the world. A sack was the reason why a sack kind of in the expiration date. Florida just didn't have enough time to do what they do. But I got to give Dan Mullen and his team for showing a lot of resiliency and a lot of heart during that football game. And a lot of fans that didn't like Florida and didn't like Dan Mullen actually had some respect for the Florida Gators. Now, we all heard about the opt-outs as they were preparing for the Sugar Bowl against the Oklahoma Sooners. Kyle Pitts opted out. Trayvon Grimes opted out. Jacob Copeland had COVID entering the game, and a bunch of other players decided to opt out. And for the most part, we all knew that Oklahoma was going to beat the Florida Gators. However, we all didn't expect that Dan Mullen handled the situation the way he handled it. Everyone gave their players off for Christmas, right? Players deserve to get some time off. But then there's the excuse after the post game that they only had 2 days to practice, that he blamed the coaching staff, that he pretty much called his players the scout team that were in the football game. And again, Dan Mullen, because he's Dan Mullen, did not take any accountability for the lack of preparation for his players against the Oklahoma Sooners. That's Dan Mullen. He blames everybody but himself. And for those who are wondering the result of that Sugar Bowl game against the Oklahoma Sooners against the Florida Gators, Oklahoma whooped their ass, 55-20. And looking at that game, you can tell that Dan Mullen did not have that team prepared. You can tell that Dan Mullen just didn't give a shit about this football game. And he even said himself, they didn't have to play in this damn bowl game, but they did. He gave every excuse in the damn book, saying, hell, our last game of the year was Alabama. The Florida Gators of 2020 was against Alabama. Not really blaming himself for developing the players that were on the football field, preparing the football players to the best of abilities in that football game. No, he never took any accountability for that. That's not what he does. He blamed everybody but himself. And when we talk about Dan Mullen, he's the leader of the ship. He's the leader of that program. He's a good football coach. There's no question about it. There's no doubt that he's a good football coach. But when we talk about Dan Mullen leading this historic football program to where they want to be, and that's honestly getting to the college ball playoffs and competing for a national championship, Florida fans, do you really honestly believe that Dan Mullen can be that person? Because if I have a coach that doesn't take any accountability for his mistakes, that throws pretty much everyone under the bus, including his own players, for his mistakes, how in the hell do you expect this guy to get your team to the damn dance? Honestly, that's a fair question. Dan Mullen's an asshole. He's a smartass. He does it every time. He's been doing this since Mississippi State. And if the Florida Gators want to get to where they want to be, it starts with the coach. It starts off with getting the players that you want to get, and then developing those young men to being the best players, to being the best people that they can be, the best versions of themselves that they can be. And so far from what I'm seeing, Dan Mullen's failing at that. Florida is extremely talented. Florida is a really good football program. But Dan Mullen, the man himself, needs to change and needs to be better, not just for himself. He needs to be better for the program and the people around him in order for the Florida Gators to get to where they want to be. Starts off with the head coach. And so far from what I'm seeing, to start off 2021, that asshole, that troll in Dan Mullen is not changing. And I don't see him changing anytime soon.